Hello, and welcome back to this positively radioactive opposite day episode here on the Alexander Society podcast. I'm your host, Tim, here to take photos and experience PTSD in person, and with me today is my co-host, Derek, who's ready to send a manhole cover into space at Mach Jesus. How are you, Derek?
I'm ready to send some manhole covers into space. That sounds like a fun time.
How's life been? How are you doing, brother?
Oh, it's been pretty fucking great. Have I told you how this job is going?
No, we haven't talked about the job.
Yeah, so I started a new job, and I genuinely actually think I could build a career, do this, long term.
Hell, work has been a mess.
Yeah, you've been telling us. Work has been kind of a nightmare recently.
And it's not really anyone's fault, because of the bad weather. So, Derek, what are you drinking tonight?
Oh, what am I drinking tonight? I did not prepare well for tonight at all. I'm not going to lie. For now, I'm probably going to have to grab some more later. But for now, I got one more of the Anthem Peach Cobbler Sour. It's the 5.1. Really, really good. I also have one of these that you gave me. It was a Prairie Artisan. It's Patches, which is the sour gummy candy sour. Yeah, it's a 5.5. I've got some other ones. If I have to go grab another one, then I'll introduce that one as well. For my shoots, I'm pulling out the Texas Ranger blended whiskey, 40%. Just some good Southern style whiskey. Tim, what are you drinking?
So I'm finally getting to try those beers you bought me while you were on your honeymoon. The Mountain Merman, I thought it was Mermaid, but it's Merman.
Yeah.
Brewing Company. I've got two different beers. One is, I really get dyslexic on flowy writing, so I'm not 100% what it's supposed to say. I think it's Summer Flash Watermelon Lager.
It's just a watermelon flavored beer. I liked it.
Yeah, it's a watermelon flavored lager. It's 4.5, and then I've got a Dream Pardonnay something, and it's a goose, and then it's 6%. Oh yeah, I didn't say my liquor. Brady's imported Irish liqueur, 17%.
Brady's?
Maybe Brady's. It's Bradys.
Yeah, that's Brady's. Brady's is an Irish last name, or Brady.
Dyslexic as fuck. So this week we are doing a little bit of a smorgasbord. We're gonna do 4 nuclear inspired episodes. That's what we're talking about today.
Hold on, I gotta cut this off at the pass real quick. I'm not a grammar Nazi. I try not to be, at least. It's something that I've had to consciously beat out of myself, but it's something that I try not to be. But this is one of my pet peeves. It's pronounced nuclear.
I think that's more of my accent than me mispronouncing it.
No, that's just a mispronunciation. It's not the L comes, or the L comes before the U in the word.
I thought that was more like dialect stuff, but whatever. So this week, since this is an Alexander article, it's not a mystery docket. Since we're doing our opposite day, we do have rule number 1. Anytime the repercussions of radiation are ignored, we're going to take a sip.
Rule number 2. Anytime someone does something cool, we take 3 sips. Quote unquote cool.
And then rule number 3. Anytime we start a new story, we'll do what, Derek?
We're going to take a shot.
Cheers.
Prost. Can I add one more rule? Every time you pronounce it nuclear, we take a sip.
Sure, why not? Here's a little background for our first 2 stories. From May 28th to October 2nd, 1957, the American government was conducting some nuclear tests. The point of these tests were to conduct the feasibility of using missiles to shoot a nuke out of the air should the Cold War go into a full-blown nuclear war.
Right.
As part of these tests, there's a bunch of stuff that happened. We're focused on 2 specific tests. So the first one, I like to call this story Nuclear Photo-Inspired PTSD.
You said nuclear sip, or nuclear.
So on July 19th, 1957, we had 5 volunteers and 1 cameraman. 5 officers within the Air Force, specifically. We had Colonel Sidney Bruce, Lieutenant Colonel Frank B. Paul, Major Norman Brogener, called Brody, Major John Hughes, and Don Laurel. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. And then our cameraman, George Yoshitake.
Oh, good, because nothing bad's ever happened when you involve Japanese people with nuclear technology.
You want to guess what we're doing?
Military tests where they had people like walk into the nuke after they set it off in the desert.
You're super, super close. So this was part propaganda, part test of the Air-to-A Genie rocket.
Uh-huh.
I don't know anything about the rocket. That's just what it's called. This test was both propaganda in that it's supposed to the American public's tension about, hey, we're blowing up nukes in the air. What if something bad happens kind of stuff? Like, hey, it's okay. Forgetting about fallout and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which, we're just going to have one sip right here. This is for this one because they're not going to consider the ramifications of their testing. Yes, they have a dedicated test site called the Nevada test site where they're doing it, but they're forgetting to account for the trap. Since they're blowing it up in the air, they're forgetting to account for like fallout that's traveling. And so people theoretically could have, so that's repercussions they're ignoring for radiation on rule 1. That's where I kind of worded that, but there's more throughout the episode for that rule. So the 5 officers volunteered to stand under 18,500 feet underneath a 2-kiloton bomb getting blown up.
That's very unsettling.
Yeah, it was very unsettling in my eyes because one of them is standing looking up at the explosion with sunglasses on.
That's just stupidity. That's not even like.
That's also where I was thinking rule 2 comes in personally. Like, he's trying to be cool, poser, because they're recording this. There is a video out there of this test.
Yeah, that's just dudes rock. Like that. There's no reason for that. What the fuck, bro?
They also, in fact, have a sign placed next to them that says Ground Zero, Population 5.
What year was this again?
1957.
Yeah, this is...
So we already know, the American public already knows a decent amount about nukes.
Yeah, this has been 12 years. Because the very first nukes that got detonated were detonated above the ground.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it was a little lower than this one, but that's still, like it travels down.
You want to know who wasn't the volunteer?
Was it the cameraman?
Yes, the one Asian American.
The one guy who wasn't white?
Yeah.
Yeah. They voluntold the Japanese guy to go stand under the nuke. Oh, I can't even imagine, the whatever, like, full bird colonel is, like planning this, and he's going through, like, a list of photographers that they have on payroll, and he's just going, no.
They actually had, around this time, a set of cameramen specifically for recording nukes. And he actually lived to 2013, and the early 2000s, I can't remember if it was 2010 or 2011, he did an interview basically like, having nukes is kind of wrong. This is fucked up.
Well, yeah, that's the reasonable position to have.
And he was talking about how, like, all of his friends that were also doing the same thing as he was, like, being those cameramen, and how he was the last one alive, how some of them had died from, like, cancer and, like, probably from radiation-induced stuff.
Yeah, that's what happens when you work around radiation. But yeah, I could just imagine, like, that full bird, like that Air Force full bird with, like, top secret clearance, just looking through the list of, like, photographers they have on payroll. And the minute he sees a Japanese name, like, his primitive, like, Army Air Corps brain training kicks in the back of his head. He's like, we need to nuke this guy. We need to nuke this guy.
I'm still, like, pissed off that they didn't account for the, like, in the video, they didn't put 6 and just be like, hey, the guy behind the camera. Like, the one person who was not a volunteer was the one person that's the worst person to have there. And that just kind of pisses me off on the story.
Was he like a guy that like regularly already did like photography for the Air Force, or did they just kind of pluck him up off the street?
I just know he was one of the main cameramen that was involved in nukes at the time, like just filming stuff related to that. I don't know exactly what he all filmed, but it was involved that.
Oh, okay. Probably some stuff that's still classified.
Probably.
Anyways, go on.
So yeah, they blow up a nuke, 2 kilotons, 18,500 feet above them, and they're just like, yay! They're just like going full propaganda in it, and they're like there for like maybe 5 minutes, so they have they're not really gonna feel the effects of the radiation like at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guarantee you, like I didn't know how to word this, but like Yoshitake definitely like had some kind of PTSD episode, like knowing like he's like if that last name is Japanese, like they nuked Japan twice, and he's right there standing underneath a bomb. Like they're not like next to the blast. They are directly underneath the explosion.
So like, what were the consequences? Like, first of all, did this actually help like assuade people's fears?
Not really.
Okay, and the second thing is, did they face any medical consequences from this?
As far as we can tell, none of the people who were underneath the bomb were there long enough to be affected by the radiation. Because radiation is a long-term exposure thing. It's not I was here for 5 minutes. Like, they were there for, like, I think actually 5 minutes. Like, I used an article for this specific one from NPR.org called 5 Men Agree to Stand Directly Under a Exploding Nuclear Bomb.
Yep.
And the Flat Electricians video on this and our next story, which I'm calling Mach Jesus.
So basically, this is just the story of 5 guys dragging their Japanese friend along to do something insanely stupid for no good reason.
And making their Japanese friend record it and not even taking him into account, like, oh, hey, we're gonna, I guess I might be more mad than I should be on the Ground Zero Population 5 but like, you don't include the cameraman?
So, God, what if... So when you say PTSD, is that rhetorical, or did he actually have, like...
I don't feel like he had a good reaction. Like, I don't know that he knew a nuke was going to go off above his head. Like, we have no information on how much Yoshitake knew going into this test, but we know he was the only non-volunteer. The Fat Electrician actually made a joke. Even back in 1957, the American government knew that cameraman was just, like, untouchable, immortal. Obviously, no, that they didn't. They just didn't give a shit about him.
Oh, okay. So I guess the lesson here is the real radiation is that we have to contend with is racial intolerance and insensitivity.
Probably.
And also the radiation from the detonating nuclear bomb.
That definitely had some effect on like nearby stuff. Also, during these tests, for no apparent reason, they just had a bunch of pigs that they were like keeping near explosions just to see how it affects them.
It's like they're doing experiments.
I don't know if it was during either one of our specific tests that we're talking about, either during this photograph or during Pascal A or B, which we're going to talk about Pascal A and B next. But like during the series of Plum Bob, I think is what the operation was called. Yeah, Plum Bob. They just were fucking around with pigs too, like just seeing how pigs react to radiation.
They were trying to fucking like breed 2-headed pigs, like what?
I don't know if any breeding. I don't know. I think this was where they were trying to still figure out, like, hey, how much is too much? Blah 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 kind of stuff. I don't know. Like, it doesn't give. This was just a blip note on the Wikipedia page when I was looking up Plum Bomb to get like Plum Bob, because I wanted to know, like, hey, these two stories were underneath one umbrella of operational tests. I want to know a little bit more about that as background for going in.
Just imagining that the like it's declassified and like the actual like thing they were trying to test with the pigs was the effect of like stillbirths and miscarriages on the pig psyche.
Maybe. Like I wouldn't put it past our government.
Yeah, like a prelude to MK Ultra. Like, if we induce a miscarriage in this person, will it get them to stop being a communist?
1,200 pigs were subjected to biomedical experiments and blast effects during this. That's what the Wikipedia article says.
12? How many?
1,200.
1,200? 1,200 pigs?
Yes.
They gave 1,200 pigs cancer.
I mean, probably theoretically.
No, not theoretically. They gave 1,200 pigs cancer.
I mean, I don't know if all of them died, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't even know what to say about this shit anymore. I don't even know why I'm surprised.
So here's the, since I didn't get to do much looking into the pigs, I'm going to go ahead and read the little blurb from Wikipedia. Again, this is Wikipedia. We don't know that, but it's actually usually a lot better than it used to be. Almost 1,200 pigs were subjected to biomedical experiments and blast effect studies during Operation Plum Bob. On shot Priscilla, which was 37 kilotons, 719 pigs were used in various experiments on Frenchman Flat. Some pigs were placed in elevated cage and provided with suits made of different materials to test which materials provided the best protection from thermal radiation. As shown and reported in the PBS documentary Dark Circle, the pigs survived, but with third-degree burns to 80% of their bodies.
Oh, God. Oh, man. You just ruined all that bacon. What the fuck? You just burned those pork chops. Don't leave them rare, but the forbidden bacon.
It's the forbidden bacon.
Yeah, the bomb that the bomb that immediately gives your pig sunburn.
Other pigs were placed in pens behind large sheets of glass at measured distances from the hypocenter to test the effects of flying debris on living targets.
Oh my God. I don't know why I'm making a bigger deal out of this than the 5 guys plus the poor hostage that they knew. But God, dude, these poor pigs, what the fuck?
I mean, it's really fucked up. A lot of our experimentation in this country was way fucked up. Full stop.
Can you imagine being a pig and you're dressed up in lead and then your child is across from you and they're dressed up in fucking metal mesh or something, and you get out with a minor sunburn and they're just cooked in front of your eyes.
If we could measure the level of PTSD within an animal, I guarantee all those pigs would have had fuckloads of it. There's no way they didn't, right?
The true victims of nuclear technology, pig PTSD.
I'll drink to that, brother.
Man, that's fucked up. Also, it's really fucked up what they did to that cameraman. Yeah, I still can't get it. That had to be on purpose, surely, right?
Oh, yeah, no, I was pissed off for the cameraman this whole time. I was like, what the fuck? That's not okay. In no world is it okay to have a cameraman who's Japanese for nuclear testing. I don't see how it wasn't, because they had to at least, there was someone that was so sensitive on payroll, was no, we got to keep him away, and the guy fought for it at the time, because, you can change over the years, and thinking it was bad, or they were just fuck this guy.
Because the guys who would have been making those decisions in the nuclear program in 1957 would have been guys that would have been junior officers when Japan was bombed. So they would have been...
They had to have been fuck the Japanese is the only thing I can think of on that decision.
Yeah, I can't imagine it was anything else. Like I said, I kind of half joked about it, but the natural Air Force officer's inclination to drop bombs on a Japanese man is not entirely
goes full jarhead. I don't know if that's the right term for military, but that's what a jarhead would do.
A jarhead is specifically a Marine. God. It's such a good thing that the Marine Corps doesn't have access to nukes.
Yeah. Yeah. They would do so much worse stuff with nukes.
I mean, the Army almost... I guess technically in World War II, the Army did have access to nukes because it was the Army Air Corps. But after that, the last time that the Army even came close to having nukes was when MacArthur tried to steal a bunch of nukes to drop on China.
I think that's one of my favorite stories is, wasn't there a general that demanded someone to drop nukes during either Vietnam and Korea, and the president was no, and it stopped?
That was MacArthur during Korea.
Ready for a shot?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cheers.
Prost.
Moving on to Mach Jesus.
I fucking love this story so much. It's so simple, but it's so
it is a very simple thing, but the idea, so I treat the what happened to the thing that goes Mach Jesus, the 2,000 pound, it's either iron or steel. Iron. It's an iron bore cap iron lid either went so fast that it couldn't have burned up and it's just going out there at Mach Jesus, going to wreck alien civilization and lead to our downfall in light years from now, or it just melted and like evaporated, like just went poof.
I like the idea of that like some random alien civilization like 100,000 years is just going to be hanging out on the other side of the galaxy, and then all of a sudden like just a giant hole is ripped through their fucking engine, and it's just like some random piece of like pure iron debris that was blown off from a planet that burned itself away with industrial climate change like 100,000 years before.
They come investigate it, like, interesting, these humans were fucking stupid.
Yeah, this was like Earth really is just the Mississippi of the galaxy. Like,
I like to call it the Alabama of the universe.
Yeah.
You definitely lock your doors when driving past us.
Here. All right, kids, we're passing Earth. Let's roll them up.
Yeah, basically. So the next set of tests that we're talking about, the first one is called Pascal A. And what they were testing is, could nuclear blasts be contained underground when exploded? Like, was that a feasible thing?
Mm-hmm.
So they originally went with just like it was a 500-foot borehole. On July 26th, they had dug a 500-foot borehole, and they put a concrete cylinder that was about 2 meters thick. And
what year is this again?
1957. So 57, 12 years after.
The same year as the last story.
Yeah. Both of these stories were like, Operation Plum Bob was from May to October, the tests that happened. So this was still part of Plum Bob. I think it was supposed to be half a kiloton. Let me check the chart. No, this is where they tested hold on. No, that was also the operation name for that photo op was actually Operation John for some reason.
John. John.
Big John. Big bad John.
Strange.
Okay, so it's 55 tons, so it's just 0.55 kilotons, I think, is the translation, because I think a kiloton is a 1,000-ton explosion, if I'm doing my math right. And again, this was just to like kind of see, hey, can we contain blasts underground? How is this going to work out? Blah, 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 blah. Absolutely did not prepare for the first test properly, and they had the tube just disappeared, for one, like that they were blasting in, like it was just gone. And then there was a jet of fire that shot for hundreds of meters in the sky.
Hell yeah. Dudes fucking rock.
They turned, again, I'm stealing a joke from the Fat Electrician, but I think it's a really fucking good joke. They turned the Earth into a potato gun.
That's so fucking good.
In Pascal B, really so, because like we could be ending at the very least a spaceship's life in hundreds of thousands of years or something, or an entire civilization. Who knows?
Tangentially related. I don't know if you picked this up while you were learning about this topic, but did you know that the U.S. military actually had a concept for fighting back a possible alien invasion by putting a bunch of nukes underground and then blasting manhole covers like a shotgun up into like a mothership in orbit?
They did what?
That was an actual idea that was floated around at one point.
I fucking love that. It's just like, I love the idea that there are actual military plans for in case of a zombie plague. They have literal zombie operation plans. They have operation plans for a lot of just like insane shit. Like what to do militarily if this thing happens that sounds like it's from a sci-fi novel. It's fucking awesome.
I wonder how many of those they have, like,
that are not declassified. Just imagine how much stuff is still classified that just sounds fucking ridiculous that the government has.
Yeah, it turns out H.G. Wells' Time Machine was actually based on a true story, and we actually have to worry about civilization collapsing soon, and like our half of our species like evolving into man-eating creatures.
The only way I could see time travel being actually created in our like timeline is if it's multiverse travel, truly not not time travel like we think of, where we can't actually go to the past of like this timeline's past, but you'll just create a branch reality.
Well, yeah, if you believe certain interpretations of time travel, like it's impossible to time travel without multiverse hopping. Anyways, what were we talking about?
We're talking about turning the Earth into a potato gun.
Yes. Yep.
So then moving on to August 27th of 57, they wanted to see if they could improve the parameters, essentially. And, oh no, I have completely wrongly estimated what tons, now I gotta look this up. What is the conversion of tons to kilotons?
Kilo would be, would that be 10 or 100?
So it's 1,000 tons. So we had 0.055 of a kiloton in Pascal A. Pascal B occurs on August 27th of 57 again. It is 300 tons, so 0.3, so about 30% of a kiloton.
Okay.
Then...
So these are relatively small nuclear payloads.
Fairly, yeah.
So like they're not going like full size. Like I think 0.3 is even smaller than like Fat Man.
Well, let's look it up. Let's see what.
Because I'm pretty sure Fat Man was like half a kiloton.
Okay, so it was Fat Man and what? Little Boy.
Yeah.
Fat Man and Little Boy. It was 21 kilotons. Was Fat Man.
Oh, I was way fucking off. Holy shit. Okay, then yeah, both of them were like more than an order of magnitude smaller than like the smallest nukes ever produced.
The blast yield was 15 kilotons for Little Boy. So we're talking way smaller than the bombings of Japan, either one. So Pascal B, I think the borehole was about the same size. Also, the original Pascal A was 50 times greater than they anticipated, because what happened is they condensed everything into a small area, forcing it to shoot up.
Yeah.
So they went slightly deeper on the Pascal B versus Pascal A. The little area that they actually did the bomb in was the same 500 meters or 490 feet. And then the actual like underground depth at which they exploded it was on Pascal A was 1,202 meters, so 3,944 feet. The conversions are right here. I do not have. I can't do that on the fly. Don't estimate my ability that far. And then they were 1,229 meters underground, so 4,032 feet underground.
Mm-hmm.
Is where these tests were taking place. They beefed up the explosion this time. So what they did is, instead of just like the cheap little cap they put on last time, they put a 2,000 iron lid and they welded it shut. They didn't just put it on top. And then this fact gets glossed over and is emphasized by the flat electrician in his video, which I wanted to point out too. They didn't just fill the hole back up. They didn't just do that like they did for like last time. You know what they did?
Ooh, what did they do? I'm imagining something like concrete.
Yeah, they backed a cement mixer up to it. Not literally. I don't know if they did. But they filled that entire, like they didn't just put the dirt back on top. They filled it to the brim with concrete.
That's just crazy. Oh, this is...
Yeah, so you basically have almost 4,000 feet of concrete between the nuclear blast
Yep.
and the surface.
Okay, what I'm realizing from this episode is that so much of nuclear research history is just guys saying, hey, what if we did this?
Fuck around and find out.
Yeah, like Dudes Rock. This is fucking Dudes Rock. This shit is cool.
Yeah, basically.
This is so fun. I mean, if I had access to nuclear weapons and was told...
And you were told, test them out, see what they can do?
Figure out what the limits of this technology is. I would go, okay, boss, and then find the most batshit fucking insane things to do with them I possibly could. I resonate with this. This is now my dream job.
Except for when you get cancer at like 36.
That is so fucking worth it, dude.
Because you'd probably go down in history. Your name would be recorded somewhere in history.
Dude, to turn one of those nukes into like a giant, like one of those cork guns you get at like Western themed gift shops as a kid, like that shit, that's worth dying at 36 from...
Derek gave everyone fucking cancer.
Give me fucking leukemia at the age of 36. I don't give a shit. I got to blow up a nuke.
I mean...
That shit's so cool.
So here's the thing about that is it did exactly worse than they imagined. They didn't really expect to be successful, but I don't think they realized how fucking insane this story would end up being.
fucking love that. Yeah, we set off a nuke underground and just plugged the hole and wanted to see if we could do anything with that. We don't expect it to work, but we thought it was worth a try.
In the Wikipedia article, it mentions a guy named Brownlee, but I think he was either a scientist, a part of the test, or like leading the test. I can't tell. He said he didn't really think it was going to work. Basically, predicting that it would not work.
I feel like there's some math you could do on this.
Do you know if they knew the numbers at the time, like properly at least?
I'm sure they could ballpark it. I mean, I suppose even if they do ballpark it, like if they admitted that, yeah, this isn't going to work, they wouldn't get to set off a nuke. So like, I get it.
Well, that and they actually do some ballpark numbers because they could not determine how fast this 2,000-pound iron steel cap potentially escaped our atmosphere. A high-speed camera that took a single frame per millisecond only caught it for a single frame.
And this was like a wide shot where you could see like a quarter of a mile up into the air, right? Like above the blast site. Because I've seen the video.
I haven't.
I've seen the video. It's fucking wild. Yeah, because it's like a wide shot. I'm not sure the exact distance, but the shot is from like super far away. So you can see like a quarter mile of space of air above the blast site. And you can only see they like slowed it down so you could see that giant manhole cover for the one frame.
They could only determine a lower limit. They could not determine the actual speed at which it went. And I didn't go and look up the speed because like I forgot to do that when I was making the script, so oopsies.
That's the bit that everybody's waiting for. That's the bit that I'm waiting for. Come on, man. This is cool, right?
It was estimated to be going 125,000 miles per hour.
Oh, that's so fucking fast.
The one I just looked up says that is 6 times that's Mach 5 on here, but I think someone said it's Mach 6. The estimated was Mach 6, so.
Oh, no, that's not Mach 6, dude. No, we have airplane.
No, it's not Mach 6, sorry. It says that it's 5 times Earth's escape velocity on the Google search I did, but I've heard Mach. It was 6 times.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I got those numbers flopped, like that data flopped in my head.
So it was 6 times, either 5 or 6 times escape velocity?
Yes.
So 5 or 6 times the speed that a rocket goes to get into space.
It is very possible that it went so fast that it did not have time to burn up.
God, I hope so.
I like to lean on. I watched a video by Kyle Hill on this subject, and he did the math, and I'm not sure he did the math right. Not because he is like a science communicator or whatever, and he actually went to college, and he's like way more educated than me. He's way more qualified to like say this, but he used the same equation they used to determine basically stuff burning up in re-entry, and I would assume it would actually have to be the inverse of that because you have to account for less drag as it goes along, because the farther out it goes.
No, it would have the same amount of total drag averaged over the distance, but it would have less. It would have, instead of it being a forward momentum force, it would be a backwards momentum force because gravity is affecting it backwards rather than forward like it would with re-entry.
He ended up doing his math, and he said it just barely most likely would be vaporized because it came really close on the numbers. He concluded at the very least that if it did not get vaporized, that it definitely got so hot that it's not just a steel cap. It's not just a flat like what they originally.
Yeah.
Which I can probably surmise that would be likely, yeah. It was at least probably superheated, like, you know, like, because of that explosion. Like, it probably definitely got, like, misshapen.
Yeah, see, and here's the thing. My immediate reaction is, like, it would be kind of disappointing if it just got vaporized. Because I want to imagine it going through space. Then I have to catch myself because I realized, wait, if we got a 2-ton, or what was it, a 1-ton or 2-ton?
It was a 2-ton, so hold on, let me double.
Okay, yeah, a 2-ton chunk of iron.
No, it's not 2-ton, it's a 1-ton. Sorry, 2,000 pounds, 1 ton.
Okay, a 1-ton chunk of iron going so fucking fast that the force of it smacking into air particles caused it to disintegrate. That is mind-boggling. That is insane. That's incredible.
Either scenario is still mind-boggling, and it sounds like something we would do if we got our hands on nukes.
That is literally redneck good old boy shit you do drunk from the back of a pickup, but with a nuke.
Yeah, exactly.
Dudes fucking rock. Oh my god, I love it so much. It has all of the aspiration and all of the vision of humanity's drive to go and chase after scientific progress and go find our destiny among the stars. It has that same drive, but at the same time, it's the drive as being done by a bunch of drunk hicks.
Yeah.
I fucking love it so much.
It has exactly that energy.
Like, it has the same energy as if fucking Cletus down in the bayou fucking built like a faster than light engine out of a bunch of spare parts he pulled out of a bunch of old Chevys from the 50s that he had hanging around in his backyard for 40 years.
It has that same energy, yes, it does.
Oh, I love it so much. It's so good.
It reminds me of that one quote from Team 4-Star. Vegeta, after getting his ass kicked by Broly, he's so goddamn cool!
The shit, oh my god. Man, I wish I was good at math. I'd be a fucking great scientist if I was good at math. Because I've got...
You do know that if you were that good at math and you wanted to be around nukes, who you'd have to work for, right?
I'd sell my soul for that.
You'd sell your soul to Lockheed Martin to be around nukes.
What, to be able to, like, play with nukes? Fuck yeah.
I doubt you get to play with nukes. Next to no one gets to play with nukes.
I don't care whatever position that I have to get into in order to be able to play with nukes. I'll do it. Yeah, fuck, I'll design a few fucking knife missiles for you. Hell yeah, as long as I get to go play with the nuke.
Till you realize the weight of the children's souls you just killed with that knife missile.
That will be a little bit of a downer on the excitement that I get from being able to play with a nuke. But nukes are pretty cool, so I'm willing to take that gamble. Some of you Middle Eastern children may die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Jesus fucking Christ, Derek!
Anyways, what were we talking about?
We were talking about Pascal B, and we're pretty much done. But you gotta factor in is, like, remember how I mentioned the concrete?
Right, yeah.
It was vaporized.
The vapor, yeah.
Like, there was no debris from the concrete, from what I understand. It was just gone.
There was no debris from the concrete. The concrete was just vaporized.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, when you think about it, you're setting off a sun next to it. Like,
here comes the sun. Do 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 do.
Here comes the sun, and I say. But yeah, that makes for. I mean, yeah, that's what happens.
You're setting off the sun underground.
That's what happens to concrete when you put the sun next to it. Like,
alrighty, you ready for our next shot?
Prost.
Cheers. So about this next story, I listened to this on Wendigoon's channel, so he's a little bit of an inspiration. I'm also using science.howstuffworks as my main source today for The Man Who Fell Apart. I didn't realize this happened in 99. This happened while we were alive.
Yeah, it was shockingly recent.
The first thing you're gonna probably call at least one, if not more, sips on. So Hisashi Uchi, today, The Man Who Fell Apart, was actually working in a nuclear fuel processing plant. So he wasn't working in a reactor or anything like that. And I don't know how this company didn't get shut down before, because they'd actually had an incident prior. I don't know how bad they were not caring for their nuclear stuff well, and they'd already had one incident prior where they probably should have got shut down with how dangerous nukes are.
Real quick, we need to take 3 sips for that last story is cool, and 1 sip for nuclear.
That's for ships. God damn, and I never knew how young he was. 35. He played rugby, interestingly enough, according to the science article. How stuff works. Science.how stuff works. He was purifying uranium oxide to make fuel rods for a research reactor. That's what he did for work. You want to know how they were purifying these uranium rods? These fuel rods?
I don't know how to purify uranium fuel rods. I'm not gonna lie to you, bud.
Okay, so normally it takes a big not bucket, but a big tank kind of like machine that does it. It takes a while that way. They'd used a bucket.
Now,
A literal bucket.
Okay. I was about to ask, when you say bucket, you mean a tin pail you can pick up from Home Depot.
I don't know how big it was because I don't know what they're doing, but I mean that same idea. Yes.
Okay. So, I already see a big problem here.
Let's take that sip for repercussions not being ignored. So they had been basically, when he was holding a funnel from a tank, basically what they did part of the process that would they in a bucket. I don't know. I don't remember the details, and it's too sciencey for me to remember. And it's not the point of this. They were supposed to do something that made a liquid radiate essentially, and it would pour that, but it wasn't actually supposed to create a sustained reaction. It was just like it would create like a mild reaction that would be later be able to use for the fuel rod, like to enrich the fuel rods. Right? They accidentally created a nuclear reaction in the bucket.
They created a runaway reaction in the bucket. They were using the purified uranium fuel rod.
Yeah.
That's not a sentence that should exist.
No, it's not.
I don't like this, Tim. I really don't. We've gotten past the fun part of nuclear technology. We're getting into the scary bits. We're getting into a reminder why I'm scared of nukes.
And why you should probably definitely not live in your fantasy land and eventually pursue a career in nuke technology, right?
A slight aside real quick. When I was younger, when I was 19, I tried to enlist in the Navy, and I scored a 93 on my ASVAB, which means that as soon as my Navy recruiter saw that, she immediately was trying to get me into the nuke program. And I thought that...
so she had a hard-on for you?
Yeah, because I guess she got a bonus from... If they could get me into like a really high demand program like that, which if I had actually gone in, that would have meant that I would be like working on nuclear submarines, and like, which is like really fucking neat. A little part of me still wishes I'd been able to do that. But they didn't accept me because I took Vyvanse when I was in high school. So I wasn't allowed to enlist.
The things that will get you disqualified from the military is both impressive and stupid all at the same time. So they had a runaway nuclear reaction in a bucket. So there were two other people there. It was Hisashi's boss and like a coworker. And I think the coworker got a high dose that is like more than you should get in a year or multiple years, but like it's not anything to truly worry about in the long run. Just probably need to get out of that industry.
Yeah, he got a few too many X-rays. He had to go to the doctor a bunch.
Around there. The boss ended up with enough radiation that was kind of like, this is concerning, but we've dealt with it before. We can take care of this. This is the biggest exposure of radiation in the history of nuclear accidents. You want to know how many times his company had issues between 53 and 97?
Oh, it's going to be a lot. God, it's going to be so... I'm guessing at least 3 a year. So...
I can't do that math, but it's less than that, but more than you want to see when radiation is involved. 21 criticality incidents.
That's averaging one every couple years.
Yeah. Now you know why they had a tin bucket that we assume that caused this criticality.
That's not... How were they allowed to operate that long?
They said that Hisashi had to have gotten 16 to 25 gray equivalents. I don't know what that means. Basically, 16 to 2,500 rads. No, 1,000. 16 to 25,000 rads.
That's some big numbers.
Shinohara got about 600 to 900 rads. The thing about this that's so unique and why Hisashi's story is so interesting is normally when you're exposed to that level of radiation, it doesn't just hit you in an instant and instantly be gone. Mm-hmm. Anytime someone's been hit with even close to the amount he did, they die pretty quickly. But because his was instantly there, instantly gone. It was very different. This story is so morbid, but so interesting because every other time he would have just died really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Like any other instance of radiation exposure to this level just kills someone instantly.
But the conditions of this particular brand of corporate greed were created just the right conditions that this guy's suffering was prolonged.
I don't think it was like, I know me and you talked about this before we did this episode back and forth, and we talked about how we really didn't like the way the doctors handled this because they kept him alive for a super long time.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I rewatched Wendigoon's video because I'd watched it before, but he really stressed on this is he doesn't think it wasn't malice. It wasn't like, hey, we shouldn't blah, 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 because this is the first time they're dealing with something like this throughout this entire time as he's unfortunately slowly like falling apart from everything. They think that they're just one step away from like essentially restarting his immune system, restarting everything. If they can get him to survive to this point, he will survive. Like they think they might be able to, essentially they think if they just get this one thing right, they will fix him essentially. And it's not like that white girl who thinks they can fix their toxic, abusive boyfriend. They actually, at the time, probably had a really good scientific reasoning to be like, hey, if we are able to restart his immune system, if we do these things, he might actually survive. We might save his life. Actually, throughout this, a lot of scientific breakthroughs happened to it along this.
Okay, yeah, when you put it in that light, like it makes a lot more sense, but at the same time, like
I still have a bad taste in my mouth with how long they kept him alive. He stayed alive. After the exposure, he lived for 83 days, which was a new record. I think it was 26 was the record before, after being exposed to high levels of radiation, was the longest someone had lived before. And I don't want to focus on what happened to his body. If you want the gory details or anything like that, that's not what we're trying to focus on here today.
Yeah. The long and short of it is his cells were, like, the reproductive part of his cells were damaged, and his body was no longer able to effectively reproduce its cells, and so he fell apart.
He had no immune system. Literally, he had no immune system.
Yeah, and so his body essentially like could not reproduce itself, and so it just kind of fell apart into its component bits.
They actually they thought they would have.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how transplant rejection or whatever that is called, I know there's a specific term for it. They thought they would actually have the reverse. Instead of the body's immune system fighting off a transplant, they thought the transplant might fight the body, which was because he had no immune system. He thought the transplant would reject him.
Right.
His sister gave multiple bone marrow transplants, and initially that did start to work because he saw minor improvement for a little bit, but at the end of the day, it just unfortunately didn't end up being enough.
Yeah, like his cells were damaged at a genetic, like the physical strands of DNA.
Yes, his chromosomes were scrambled.
The physical cells of DNA were blasted apart. Like, you don't fix that.
Everything about this story is like, I think if we do this, which at the time I don't blame them, we might be able to get him to this point. They actually had to basically start hooking up machines, and I'm not trying to get into the details, but like to do a lot of functions for him to keep him alive, because they couldn't cut into him, because you start to bleed, you can't stop it. Like there's no clotting factor, no nothing at the time. So they started hooking up with the machines, and he ended up being more machine than human. But during this process, they actually made a lot of scientific breakthroughs, not just because they were studying the effects of radiation on the body, but because they actually had to black market buy some of the drugs that he would need to treat him and synthesize them in new ways to administer them to him so that it wouldn't have an adverse reaction. Because the ways they had to administer certain things, the normal way you get it or the normal way it is synthesized would have not been good for him at the time. But then they were able to synthesize them in new ways. And I hate that this man died because of a corporate negligence, but I am at least glad that there were some good to come of it at the end of the day, because like I can't give you a list on how many breakthroughs happened because of this, but like at least they were able to make some good out of this. And I'm not saying like I think that company should have been shut down long before he had.
Yeah.
that accident. And I think that company, I don't know if it got shut down, but it definitely should have been shut down after that. Like, there's no way in fucking hell they should have. And the family was there for a long time. The wife is the most strongest person. Didn't break down until after he passed. She kept a brave face for him the entire time. And
which is crazy considering what he looked like there at the end.
I mentioned before, I don't want to mention what happened, all that, but his last words before he had to be intubated and were expressing how much he loved his wife. I think that, and the reason why they kept pushing is because he had asked the doctors to push for him, to make him recover for his wife, because he wanted to be there for his family. Like he was trying to persevere for his family, and that's part of why he agreed to a lot of the stuff he did. Like, he was very, like, the doctors sung his praises that they were there, the nurses, like that. He was super embarrassed when he couldn't move on his own, so they had to give him sponge badges. Like, this isn't my wife. Like, he was very, like, he was, even in this situation, like, he had, like, didn't feel like a lot of the stuff that they were doing for him was necessary, but he appreciated the effort, like, you know?
Mm-hmm. This guy's story is like an incredible blend of depressing and just horrifying in equal parts. And
I want to say, like, underneath all of that, there's a little bit of inspiration, like, of, like, the indomitable human spirit that we joke about on social media and all that, because, like, if I had gotten exposed to that, although this is hindsight knowing what happened to him, I would have told someone, like, no, cut me off, kill me. Let me go in my sleep, like, just morphine me up, overdose me something. Like, if I'm in the hospital after that exposure, I don't want to, like, fall apart like he did, even if there's a chance to survive me. For me to survive, I don't want to take the risk of having to go through what he did. And I don't mean that in, like, a mean, tough way, but, like, I admire that indomitable human spirit, but I don't want to take the risk that I would have to be in his shoes. Now, I might change my mind on that in 6 years if I have a wife and kids and I want to pull through for them. Like, but the me of today, like, I couldn't imagine trying to have to pull through that. I love my family. I would do a lot of things for them, but please don't ask me to pull through. Try and fight through that kind of level of radiation exposure. Anything equivalent, like something that's just, hey, maybe we'll be able to pull through, but, like, it's going to be torture. It's going to be agony. I actually didn't get to this part. Unfortunately, in April, Shinohana Hisashi's coworker died too. The Japanese investigated the accident, included, they saw there was poor regulation oversight. They lacked an appropriate safety culture.
Yeah, no fucking shit.
Inadequate training, qualifications. 6 of the officials from the company were charged with professional negligence, but unfortunately in 2003 they were only given suspended prison terms. And Japan is one of the worst countries on their regulation systems, at least for low-level stuff, because you can literally just, like, I know a lot of people say our prison system is like, hey, you can buy your way out of stuff, but they usually mean in the sense, like, you can buy really good lawyers and try and fight it and, like, do that, or, like, you can pay people off in the end. Literally, in Japan, like, you know how, like, in Japanese media, it's a trope about, like, the person who ropes on the train, or, like, sexual deviance is, like, not as badly punished, because it actually isn't. You can literally just, like, on stuff that we would consider, like, rape and stuff like that. I don't know the specific laws. I don't know if rape specifically, so don't quote me on that part. But, like, a lot of, like, molestation stuff that would be, like, hard prison terms, and the only way you could buy your way out of it is if, like, you spend money on, like, lawyers and stuff like that, or bribing officials. You can literally just pay a fine.
Yeah, which is insane, considering, like, the flip side of the Japanese carceral system, which is, or the Japanese justice system, which is, like, they have an insanely high prosecution rate. Like, the only way they will ever take you to court is if you...
It's like our federal charges. If you were brought up on federal charges, you're basically fucked.
Yeah, and that's, like, just across the board for the Japanese justice system. But then there's, like, these few examples, especially when in regards to, like, corporate malfeasance, or, like, workplace safety, or certain situations of, like sexual abuse and things like that they're just ridiculously light on. And it's such an insane indictment of their entire justice system that's the state of affairs there. It blows the more I learn about Japanese law and just Japanese government in general, the more blown away I am that anybody accepts that situation.
I mean, I'm dissatisfied with our American criminal justice system. And
I was going to say, and then I look back at the American justice system, and then I'm like, okay, I get it. I understand that why there are people that just accept it.
Japan seems like they're in the future in a lot of ways, and there may not be the ways that matter for some people, and they're ass backwards in a lot of other ways. Like,
Yeah, like whose future are they in? It's not, because it's not the people's future. It's somebody's future. It's not the people's future.
and it's weird because it doesn't feel like the elite's future, like we see, like, oh, we're racing towards the elite future for the elites in like America. Like, it's not the same kind of dystopian that we're rushing towards.
Right. Yeah, they've got their own unique, well, like, like the Marxist sort of materialist kind of influence in my thinking. Like they've got their own sort of future that they're rushing towards that's like hyper dystopian, that's informed by their own historical like conditions. And
yeah, it's historical conditions affect everyone differently, and it's just that we've intentionally made this just a single story within a smattering of nuclear stories because neither one of us really liked having to cover, because we thought that getting into Hisashi's story and discussing the ramifications was something we would both enjoy on that part, but we also didn't want to besmirch his name in like a way, because we make jokes and we talk shit, all that kind of stuff, and we also didn't want to go to a full episode of full on depressing because it would be hard to make our normal jokes and stuff like that on his story in particular. So we didn't do a full episode. We know there's a lot of detail and nuance to this story, and I really feel like you guys, if you want to learn more about this, you should look into it more, especially if you're worried about any kind of radiation stuff. And it's a cautionary tale. It's why deregulation is a very bad thing in America, because we're rushing towards that right now.
mm-hmm.
And it's why we have the rules the way we do, even if people think they're stifling innovation.
Yeah, and I want to make a couple things clear. This guy, what was his name again?
Hisashi Uchi.
Hisashi Uchi. He was two things. One, he was incredibly brave, and two, he was a victim of corporate greed and capitalist violence.
Yes, like I right on the money on that. Like every once in a while we like get into like our political views, and I've tried to like touch him up a little bit or cut out what I feel like is bashing the listener over the head, because like at the end of the day, like I don't think one episode of us is gonna like change someone's opinion, and I would rather not that sour their opinion of the rest of the show. And like and we've made it pretty clear we're pretty left leaning, both of us, but this is what happens in our unregulated market. This is what happens when there's no protection for the people. This is why I will always fight and say, like, it should always be on the employer to have almost too safe conditions.
Yeah.
Than just have shit like this be able to happen. And yes, this is an extreme example, and like, oh, no one's going to be that stupid with radiation anymore in America, even if they deregulate. Like, I get, in practicality, you're probably right. We're probably not going to have that bad, like, not because they care about their people, but because they don't want to deal with the media fallout because of the way social media works anymore. But that doesn't mean that deregulation wouldn't lead to a lot more issues where people are being harmed in other fields.
Yeah. So I want to get this off of my, like, out of my head while I still have it. If a corporate entity wants the privilege of being able to, and this is like its own thing, like separate from like what I actually believe, which is that all of these fucking assholes should be abolished and gotten rid of. But what I think is that if they really do want to have this kind of privilege and this kind of power in society, they should have the responsibility of keeping their employees safe and keeping their employees like well paid and taken care of. And they're not going to take on that responsibility voluntarily, so they have to be fucking forced. They have to be forced to. And so we have a responsibility to make our government force them.
Exactly. It's everyone's like, well, we're just going to be able to be, because like taking care of people is the right thing to do, blah, blah, blah. Corporations don't give a fuck about anyone. You ready for the next story?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Cheers. So our final story is, this is an earth-shaking meltdown.
This is another one of those that kind of sucks. Not for...
Honestly?
I'm sure, I haven't dug into it pretty deeply, so I'm not gonna, I don't know for sure if there's like some like malfeasance going on, but like from the outside, it just seems like it was an unfortunate incident that the bravery of a bunch of like very hardworking people was able to abate the worst consequences.
Actually, like this story is actually not that bad of a story. So we're talking about the Fukushima nuclear meltdown.
Sip.
What happened was on March 11th, there was a very large 9.0 earthquake and this led to a tsunami.
Which is an insane earthquake size.
Yes.
That is like world historic, like will be talked about for millennia size earthquake.
Yes. So what happened was that led to it fucked a lot of shit up. There was even a tsunami because of it. I'm not certain if the earthquake knocked the power out or if the tsunami knocked the power out, but there was a power grid failure and it damaged all the power plant's backup energy sources.
And this was in, what part of Japan was this in?
Okuma, Fukushima, Japan. Specifically, the reactor we're talking about is the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. It basically led to the inability to cool the reactors after shutdown, compromised containment is what it says, and the release of radioactive containments into the surrounding environment. It was called a rated 7. On the international nuclear event scale.
Yep.
I don't know kind of what scale that is. It's considered the worst incident since Chernobyl, which also is a rated 7. So it's on par with Chernobyl. As of now, there is no confirmed cases of people passing away due to this from radiation.
Which is a fucking miracle.
There is only one death that is possibly connected that could have been by that. There was an insurance payout from I think these stories are connected, so I'm going to connect them, but I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this part. It is. So there was an insurance company that paid out for someone who died due to lung cancer, who was there at the time, but it was 4 years later, which is kind of fast for that kind of exposure they had.
Mm-hmm.
But they were like, they just paid it out, just whatever. Six other people were reported to have developed cancer or leukemia, but one that's not a lot of people for the size of, like, it's an entire town that is basically irradiated. Also, there's no, honestly, with how long it's been, there's no telling how long, like how much could be from this disaster or not. Because it's still early in telling on the radiation exposure, because it usually takes a couple decades.
Yeah.
If it's this kind, you either get a lot and you're going to die really quick, or you're going to die like a long time later because of it.
Yeah.
6 other people have developed it, and 2 workers were hospitalized for radiation burns, and several other people had like physical injuries, but like nothing we know for like directly is 100% like because of the accident.
Yeah. Are you going to go into like the details of like what exactly happened?
So it was on the east side of the city in the Sendai Migai prefecture. Pardon my pronunciation. I apologize. That is where, and the focus and depth of the earthquake was 18.6 miles below the floor of the Western Pacific Ocean. So that gives us a little bit more indication on that. And they actually had, I didn't even realize this on that. This earthquake had foreshocks that were a 7.2.
They had to have one, like a 7.2 is like a primary earthquake is like, that is like city destroying. And those were the aftershocks.
Basically what happened is they lost power and they weren't able to properly shut down the reactor in time, and it kind of had a meltdown and released radioactive material into Fukushima. And they were able to evacuate directly from the earthquake / the tsunami, not from the meltdown. People were confirmed dead or listed as missing from the disaster were like 18,500. Final estimates gave a total of 20,000 though. Fewer than 100 were from the immediate prefecture areas. Mm-hmm. Migai had the greatest losses. 10,800 were from there, and another 4,100 were injured. A lot of people were injured. Were like specifically from the tsunami and the earthquake. So a lot of the people who were unfortunately harmed from this, this is one of the few radioactive disasters that didn't really take lives, and which is insane.
Yeah, this one is more like a nuclear science success story.
Yes, this is actually how you recover from something like this. And more than half of the victims were like older, 65 and...
Yeah, probably. People that were less mobile probably didn't have anybody at home.
There were fires, basically all kind of stuff like, hey, we just have a major natural disaster, were destroyed. They established a no-fly zone, and there was like high levels of iodine-131. Basically, a lot of what happened was because they used the seawater to partly cool that. And actually, later on, a few years later, there was people who were really worried about them finally releasing some of the water that was in the plant there after the meltdown and all that. but they had actually lowered the radiation levels of the water to under background layer radiation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. That's actually crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't even know you could do that.
I remember hearing someone speak about this not long after, because it was a big deal a couple years ago. It was since 2018, because I remember it first getting covered when I was watching Philip DeFranco at one point, and I started watching him in 2018. And then I was like, this is very interesting, and I kind of looked into it more, and I remember hearing that. And I could be wrong or been misinformed at the time, but at the very least, it was not a danger to release that water that they released, because people were super like, how could you release radioactive water into the ocean, blah, 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 blah.
Because water is really good at dispersing radiation. That's why it's used. If you put radioactive water into the ocean, the entire ocean is going to absorb all of it and disperse it to such an extent that it's not going to be dangerous. Like, that's...
So it's like any disaster. They ended up cleaning up. It took a while and all that. In 2015, nearly all of the debris had been removed. From what I understand, it's to the point where theoretically they could start moving people back in, but there's caution and all that, and which understandably so.
Yeah, this isn't exactly like a normal situation that you can be like, yeah, we just got it all cleaned up and you're ready to move back in. Like, no, that's not. I'd be hesitant too.
Yeah, another thing, and I don't have any source to quote this, but it's like everyone's heard about this. A lot of elderly people actually volunteered to help with the cleanup of like the area with the radioactive area. I don't know if it was directly with the radioactive area or if it was just debris in the area in general while there was still radiation. Because they were like, hey, I don't have a whole lot of time left. Even if I start suffering the effects of radiation things, I've lived a long life. I am not going, like, even when I, like, hey, this is like 20, maybe 30 years down the line. Even if I do suffer this, I'll still have an extremely long life at that point. It's not going to impact my overall life enjoyment. If a younger person did this 20, 30 years down the line, they're still going to like have a theoretical life ahead of them, or would have been cut short because of that. And that's really inspiring, honestly. And it's only been like almost 10 and a half years. Like it's 14 years since almost 14 years since the accident. And I haven't heard any major, like we still haven't have any deaths that are tied to the radiation. So like,
right. Yeah.
Theoretically, like that was an insane thing that they could have done. So like, I'm really proud of, like, I like to think that I would be that kind of person. Like if something happened and I'm like in my 60s, 70s, and like, hey, we had this kind of meltdown and we need help recovering, that I would go and do that.
Yeah, that shows.
Honestly, I'm invoking Rule 2 because that's cool as hell.
Yeah, that's fair. You know what? That is something that I do really admire about Japanese people is that, and that's something that's kind of absent in the United States, that they've got a sense of like community.
They have a social, yes, there's more of a social community. Like, yeah, there's a lot of like really messed up socially things about Japan, like the borderline Zionistic against people who don't work like 80 hours a week. I exaggerate that, but yeah, like the people who don't have like the way they just ostracize people there is insane. But like also they still care to like a degree that Americans say they do, but don't actually practice.
Yeah. People there, like, I mean, sometimes it's like out of a misplaced sense of like misplaced sense of like social stigma that a lot of people kind of feel the need to care about community, but a lot of it is just like a genuine sense of like being a part of like a larger community and being a part of a larger thing than themselves that is really absent in American civil culture that I really wish we had a lot more of.
Honestly, yeah, same. Like it's...
Yeah, because how many boomers do you know off the top of your head that you've known personally that would do that?
That are specifically boomers? None.
I can't think of any off the top of my head from that generation that would do that. And that's cynical of me. That's shitty of me. But like, I can't think of any that would do that. I can't think of any from that generation in the United States that are that self-sacrificing.
I know a lot of good people in my family. None of them are like a boomer generation that I can think of that would be like that. Although I am kind of like a little mixy on like, I'm not sure exactly what counts as who's what generation in my family because I don't like sit and think about that every day. But the kind of person that we're talking about, like that went out there and like went and picked up the radioactive material. I know my great grandfather would have been that kind of person. Like my grandpa Alfred would have done that. Like that's the kind of person he is. And I'm glad I have someone like that in my family. I don't know if anyone else would have had that courage but him, like in my family. And I'm not saying that as like a diss on anyone else in my family, because that is a difficult decision to make no matter who you are. But I feel like he would be the kind of person who would do it without hesitation.
Yeah, now that I think about it, my grandfather, when he was alive, he would have, but he always had like a strong sense of like
Morality.
just the idea of living for other people.
Yeah.
That is just even like the barest kind of hint, like not asking everybody to be like a fucking superhero who rushes into danger at the first sign, but just like doing the bare minimum.
Taking small risks like this. Like a lot of people would say like, yeah, going into that's a risk, but like the kind of risks they're taking, like they obviously probably took protection. They obviously probably took their time and all that stuff. So they were probably lower exposure because they probably weren't doing it stupidly. But the saying like, I am older, I can go do that because even if the radiation becomes too much, I have lived long enough that I don't want the younger generation to have to deal with that. That is beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a perfect encapsulation of what humanity could be.
Should be.
And it's sad because that attitude is it's so absent from the United States. It's so absent. We are devoid of that. And it's so frustrating.
I hate it, but it's something I've just come to learn about Americans. It's one of the reasons why I kind of like, as much as I definitely think Japan's society is flawed, I'm always just intrigued and fascinated by it, just because of the ways in which it is both selfish and selfless.
Yeah, this is something I heard on Dan Carlin's podcast about the Japanese army during World War II. He said that there's an old saying that people usually use this saying to apply to Jewish people, but he thought that it was appropriate to apply to Japanese people. He said, the Japanese are just like everybody else, but more.
More of everything. Like more compassion, more hatred. Like, and I don't mean like in the American way, just like more hatred in like odd fucking ways. Like,
yeah, ways that are culturally dependent, but like that is prominent in their society, just like random acts of heroism are very prominent in their society. Like Japanese are human, but more.
Yeah. Any final words before we hop off for the night, Derek?
No, just that nuclear technology is both intensely fascinating and just really fucking scary at the same time.
Agreed. Like it's something I really would like to see more proliferation of, like, because I want to see us have power plants to have more. If we take the right precautions and the right safety measures, it is way more safe than anything we have on the market right now.
Right, yeah.
And it'll generate way more power than the issues with solar. But I just feel like we need to, like, yes, we are super. I feel like we're a little bit too cautious with nuclear power personally, but understandably so with the way regulations have been and when it could benefit us in the future. Where can they find you on social media, Derek?
Oh, they can find me on Blue Sky at Visigoth. The O is a 0. They can find me on Twitter, technically. I haven't posted on there in a while, but they can find me on Twitter at Visigoth. The first I has a 1, the O is a 0. Tim, where can they find the podcast stuff and your stuff?
So they can find me on both Blue Sky and Twitter. I don't ever post on either a whole lot to begin with, but at Tim, aka Otis, and they can find the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at the Alexander Society Pod, and Twitter and Blue Sky at Alex Society Pod, and then on TikTok at Alexander Society. If they've enjoyed what they've listened to, they can give us a rate review on their streaming platform of choice, and we hope to see you next time.
Bye.